Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Paramount's Transformers 1, which had such high expectations across the board, and maybe that was unfair, but it turned out to be less than meets the eye. Not only could it not meet box office expectations, but it couldn't even open at number 1. It couldn't own its weekend. It was close! Matinees didn't overperform or perform as anticipated. So instead, Warner Brothers' Beetlejuice took the top spot for the third weekend in a row. At this point, with only Megalopolis and the Wild Robot standing in its way, I like those odds for Beetlejuice. It could end up being the number 1 movie, as we thought might happen, for the entire month of September until Joker 2 hits. Now, North American movie theaters announced late last week that they'll be investing $2.2 billion with a B in upgrades, insisting it's because they've turned a corner and it's clear that people want to go to movies. I think there's clearly still interest, right? But I also think there's a clear indication that with the way the experience currently stands of going to the movies, with a few exceptions, overall, audiences have proven that they're more than willing to wait for digital and streaming. In fact, when it comes to viewing choices for movies, when we play the Goldilocks game, it seems that digital is what's just right, as theaters seem to be too expensive, especially since moviegoers don't feel they're getting what they pay for, and streaming, it seems, takes too long. Which is your favorite bowl of porridge when it comes to watching movies? And heck, since digital has you paying a la carte, often at an extremely high price for the first month or so, studios are okay with this hybrid model of theaters and digital coexisting. Theater owners, though, there's no future for them with that model. So I believe that's the real reason that movie theater owners are finally investing these billions of dollars in upgrades. They finally realized that audiences are not going to come back to theaters without significant incentives, as we've been discussing. Although when we first talked about this upgrade announcement on Friday's live stream, many of you said that what you really want is a distraction-free environment. No phones, no talking. I would also wager a cleaner environment, in terms of not only the theater, but the restrooms, etc. So let's see how long it takes for movie theaters to understand that issue and try and resolve it. They're going to have to hire legit security guards, which will be expensive. Maybe they only need them on the weekends, but I think that's just going to have to be something that they do. I went to the movies this weekend. I went to the Regal Battery Park. I'm going to talk about Wolves a little later in this video. And I have to say, it was such a lovely experience. I stopped the manager on the way out and complimented him on the wonderful theater and the team that he had behind it, who were doing such a wonderful job. Although I have to say, my theater was pretty crowded, but, people aren't going to the movies like they used to. And as you can see, it's such an unusual experience to have a good time at the movies that you stop the manager on the way out. So we'll see. But this box office it's meh, We've had some hits this year, but not enough to sustain theaters. It's the same problem that streaming, in fact, is having, and that's not only a different delivery methods, but just too much content. Before the explosion of streaming, it used to be that there were only a couple of entertainment choices every weekend, both in theaters and on the small screen. And either you watched it or you didn't, but everybody was on the same page. Now there's just, as we've also talked about with franchises, a fracturing of the audience. And so how can the theaters get people to go there every weekend like they used to? I still go every weekend. But when I was growing up, I used to go 2 to 3 times every weekend to the movies. And now I think, although I've told you for many years that most people go to the theaters once a month. But I think even that's waning. So I'm curious, how many times a month do you go to the movie theater? And how has that changed with the advent of streaming? And then also, of course, pre and post pandemic. How has that changed your movie-going habits? I think, again, just like we were saying with franchises, talk to your audience, talk to your consumer. And I think, unfortunately, I know that sometimes it's tough to talk to the audience, right? I mean, they're a spirited group. But you just have to do it. I think that's the only way you get the true answer. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Because what do people say when they're happy? You finally listened to us. And we knew that this was a problem for theaters. We've known for years that they're just not, the cost of the experience does not match the quality of the experience. All right, so Beetlejuice is doing nicely. When I got to the theater, there seemed to be a pretty good amount of people in the lobby. And I said to the ticket taker, what's everybody seeing? And he said, Beetlejuice and Transformers and The Substance. Those are the movies he said were doing the best. But then I got my little Fandango app up and I could see the seat sales and they weren't that strong. I guess everybody just arrived at once and was getting their snacks before disappearing into their theaters. But, those theaters were not even 50% full for the most part. So, I think this is encouraging. Again, don't just go out of business. But, there just isn't, they're not working hard enough to get you to go to the theater. Beetlejuice has been a nice breath of fresh air for the fall box office, but it's just one movie. And it's only doing well domestically. Its overseas numbers continue to be a real buzzkill. Again, domestic theaters are like, we got our money, but, we also have to worry. There's a lot of different players in the game, and, we want studios to do well as well. Remember, there was an article saying that Warner Brothers insisted that Tim Burton bring his budget down to under $100 million if he wanted a theatrical release, because otherwise they just didn't think that it warranted it. And I think even still, the overseas numbers are so weak here that I would have preferred the budget maybe be around 75 with the way this is. But again, we're going to talk about digital. So Twisters also has done very poorly overseas. And Alien Romulus, interestingly, is the reverse. Very strong overseas, weaker than we would like domestic. All three movies will likely be significantly strengthened by their digital sales and rentals. Twisters, we've been seeing it doing very, very well on digital, in fact, when we look at iTunes every week. And the OG Beetlejuice has also been doing well. It's in the top 10 still on digital as the sequel is in theaters. And then also, that movie should probably do very well, the sequel on digital, when it hits just in time for Halloween. So again, the studios will likely, by the end of the whole run, they'll edge out a win. But that leaves theaters high and dry. They've become a smaller fraction of a movie's success. So let's talk about Transformers 1. Incredible critic and audience scores. But I think, so what went wrong here? You would think this would be another win for theaters. But I think it's pretty clear that most audiences who have an interest in this film are willing to wait to check it out on digital and or Paramount Plus. And I think despite the film's all-star voice cast, which I didn't see doing a lot of advertising, to be fair. I mean, they did show up at Comic-Con, but still, it's skewing quite young, and I think that's because of the design. I mean, I think it looks like a children's film instead of a film that has, broader four-quadrant appeal. Some adult fans are being supportive of the film, but it seems that most adult fans just aren't showing up at the multiplex to support it. And therefore, Transformers 1 has opened on par with the last Paw Patrol movie. That's the space that it's in. And a scooch lower than the last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which I think, Paramount wasn't thrilled with. And these are all Paramount films, by the way. These are their current family films. It's no Sonic, that's for sure, also again from Paramount. And instead, Transformers 1 joins, what's the difference there? I mean, I guess the live action and Jim Carrey, giving that nostalgia feel for his earlier roles, right? But Transformers 1 joins Bumblebee instead as one of the lowest debuts ever for the Transformers franchise. Two quality films that everyone raved about, but just at the end of the day simply did not have broad appeal. And sure, they got the director of Toy Story 4 who delivered quality-wise, but who knows that Josh Cooley directed Toy Story 4? Everywhere I looked, I saw Josh Cooley's name. No, you say from the director of Toy Story 4. That's the name recognition. Although, I would also say that everybody would agree that Toy Story 4 was the weakest of the bunch. I don't know if that would be a huge selling point for people, but I think the director of Toy Story 4 means more than Josh Cooley. Sorry, Josh Cooley, but it's true. Don't you want a successful movie? That's how people come to know who Josh Cooley is. You say from the director of Toy Story 4, and you go, and the audience goes, "Ooh, who is that?" And then you go, "Oh, it's Josh Cooley." That's how it works. And while these designs sure won over the littlest Transformers fans, clearly it was a hard sell for adult fans. Style of animation matters. I'm looking at you, The War of the Rohirrim. Oh, this really frosts my cookies. All right, so animation has really caught on with adults on streaming. Very successful, but Hollywood is still figuring out how they can make that work for them in theaters. Outside of the major animation studios that deliver 4-quadrant hits that everybody goes to see. It's almost like you gotta go see the movies from, well, not so much from Disney Animation these days, but that's why they just got rid of Jennifer Lee. But, Disney Animation, Pixar, DreamWorks, Illumination, for the most part, people are like, what are you guys doing? We want to see. But if you're going to break out of that and have maybe an animated film that is aimed at adults, which I would hope to see. This is something that's happened in the East for a very long time. We're trying to have it happen in the West. Again, the success of adult animation on streaming has been encouraging. But on that note, I believe it's going to take an animated feature film with the level of sophistication and artistry of Wknd and Blue Eye Samurai to get this done. And I am deeply disappointed that The War of the Rohirrim is not that film, when the concept art made it seem like it would be. I'm like, what happened? How did they get from that concept art to what they have? It's just mind-boggling. All right, so Hasbro, what do you think? What do you think it's going to take to get adults to go see animation, that's aimed at them specifically in theaters? Because we're watching it on streaming. Although even there, it has struggled a little bit. X-Men 97. Arcane, Blue Eye Samurai, never getting on the Nielsen charts. The reason they keep getting made, although Arcane only has one more season and it's done, is that they're less expensive. Harley Quinn, the Bad Batch, X-Men 97, nowhere to be seen. Invincible, but it's tough. I mean, maybe the answer is this audience is smaller than we think. But then why would you make an animated feature film aimed at adults? Because the audience isn't there. We'll see how The War of the Rohirrim does. Based on the trailer reaction, I'm thinking not good. So Hasbro split with its former business partners, ending Hasbro Studios to create Hasbro Entertainment. Although so far it seems to be a change in name only as they continue to deliver box office duds. Transformers, G.I. Joe, Dungeons & Dragons, these are huge brands. Why are their adaptations struggling? I'm asking those of you who are fans of these brands. I mean, I liked Transformers 1. I liked Snake Eyes. I liked Dungeons & Dragons, but all flopolas. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts down below. Surely Michael Bay can't be the only genius in the room here. Although even his style wore out. It's interesting. Those kind of like, Michael Bay, Zack Snyder, that style kind of fell away in favor of more like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve. Isn't that interesting? Just to see, what people are into at the moment as well. That's something else to consider. Hopefully Hasbro's film execs can figure it out as they plan also not only to continue with those franchises, but a Monopoly movie produced by Barbie's Margot Robbie. I don't think she's going to be in it, but she's going to produce it. Clue, produced by Ryan Reynolds. Again, I'm not sure if he's going to be in it, but he's going to produce it. Robbie and Reynolds both can be very strong. Reynolds in particular, because he has consistency. So far, Margot Robbie's only had a home run with Barbie as a producer. But those are good choices. I feel pretty good about both of those. And I particularly think that Ryan Reynolds should be able to do very well with Clue when he finds a minute. He's quite busy. And then also, of course, they want to do that G.I. Joe Transformers crossover that might star Chris Hemsworth. Will he still be interested? We said he was on the ropes. His career's not going so great. But after the soft debut of Transformers 1, where, of course, he does one of the main voices, maybe he'll want to take his, go find some other IP. I think it all depends on how big a paycheck Hasbro and Paramount are offering him. And I think it's probably going to be pretty big. And again, the Transformers 1 critic and audience scores are high and keep this from being an embarrassment. Instead, it's now just unfortunate. But, unfortunate's a problem too. But at least also, what else Transformers 1 has going for it? At least it came out in theaters. After a string of box office flops, and talk about embarrassment, and some bad PR on that note, Apple decided to cut their losses with Wolfs and see if they could at least boost their subscribers, moving Wolfs to a severely limited theatrical release for just 1 week, and this was this 1 week, it opened on Friday, before going straight to Apple TV Plus, rather than even stopping over at digital. You have to be an Apple TV Plus subscriber to watch this movie when it comes out and hits the streaming service on Friday. And when it debuted on Rotten Tomatoes with a mediocre Rotten Tomato score out of the festival circuit, it had seemed like maybe Apple TV had made the right call, even if stars George Clooney and Brad Pitt were disappointed. Well, I saw the movie last night, and while the ending makes absolutely no sense, I believe intentionally so, it's still a fantastic time at the theater, and my tiny theater was close to sold out. A lot of tickets were sold. The movie is sleek, thrilling, and fun, extremely well directed by Spider-Man's John Watts, even if he wrote a nonsensical ending. With such big stars, neither Clooney nor Pitt have been in a big movie for 2 years now. So people are like, where have Clooney and Pitt been? They're right here. And those last movies did okay, by the way. You might be like, well, this looks like a streaming movie. Started Ticket to Paradise, and it managed to get a couple of dollars at the box office. So with two big stars and maybe, I don't know, a proper ad campaign, I think there's a chance that it could have done at least solid theatrical business. Again, it was a really good, I thought it was a wonderful time at the movies. I had a really good time. But now we'll never know. I mean, sure, yeah, we're asking Apple to spend even more money, right? But they already rolled the dice with yet another $200 million picture. Why not spend a little bit more money to see if maybe they could get this one to work? Here's the reason. Now, some people are like, why is Apple giving $200 million on these movies? Well, that's because there's no back end. That's the way the pay structure works for them. Because usually you would get a lot of money because you get theatrical back end. You get a part of the box office. But Apple doesn't like to work that way. They want to have the freedom to do like the move that they just did. They don't want to pay out any of their streaming dividends. So that's why streaming movies are so expensive. That's one of the reasons they're so expensive. Well, not only that, but they were luring talent with big paydays for a while there as well. And I think that's a factor as well with the Apple movies. They're like, you didn't think you'd make a streaming movie? How if I give you tens of millions of dollars? Oh, now you will make a streaming movie. Excellent. But also, again, there's no back end. So I think that they should have back ends built in instead of a cut of the box office. It should be performance tiers, X number of downloads, or and then you get additional money. They have to figure something out. They can't continue to do this. But then the fact that they're putting the film effectively behind a paywall, not even, again, as I said, stopping at digital first, where I feel Wolf's would have done incredible. I mean, it's just more brilliant Apple TV content that no one's ever going to see. It's frustrating. So frustrating. Apple didn't even bother to report Wolf's box office for the weekend, at least at the timing of this video, and it opened in less than 50 theaters. But I would have liked to have seen the per theater average. I would have liked to have seen what that was, because I bet it was pretty good. While DC Studios' Superman only played for one day with just 2 showtimes, and it was on Batman Day for some strange reason. It's like, what? What are you guys doing? James Gunn, some of you sent this to me, touted the quality of DC Studios content, although some of you also pointed out that Gunn didn't actually produce either of these projects. But also, I would say quality doesn't guarantee success. Just ask Transformers 1. Although, again, quality, also with Transformers 1, having quality at least makes lack of success unfortunate instead of embarrassing. So at least DC has that going for it. I mean, Marvel, Star Wars, and a lot of franchises right now are struggling to get strong critic and audience scores. Although, there's a little movie that James Gunn is forgetting there, and that's Joker 2. In fact, it already has an audience, or at least a critic score on Rotten Tomatoes that's out there. And I didn't see that included in the social media post, because it would have messed it up, obviously. Also, James Gunn didn't produce Joker 2, to be fair, but he didn't produce these other movies either. You can't, it's a disingenuous tweet. I understand totally what he's trying to do. I just maybe would have, it's so twisted that I just maybe would have just talk about the individual. I think just focus on Superman. Just make sure it's good. And Creature Commandos, which I am also concerned about. I continue to believe that franchises are going to struggle for a while now. They're going to continue to struggle with the current fatigue and toxicity that's rampant in fandom these days. I think you'll have breakout hits here and there, and I think it's anybody's guess as to what they might be. I think it's really hard to tell what the fandom's going to do right now. I think even the fandom doesn't even know what it's going to do. I think I think we're in a place of we'll know it when we see it, and even then, sometimes it just doesn't gel. It just doesn't come together. It's become, again, because maybe also of just so many choices. How do you become the number one choice in that space? and people have such short attention spans in terms of not only the content, but what they're looking forward to. If you don't just grab it when in that moment, it's very difficult. The ground is shifting beneath our feet in so many ways in this industry right now. All right. Whew, depressing. All right, so Halle Berry and Demi Moore both debuted new films this weekend themselves, and neither could do much to move the needle. Never Let Go is yet another flop from Lionsgate, who announced this past week that things are so bad, they're throwing in the towel and letting AI make their creative decisions going forward. Whew. They've set a pretty low bar for the machines, and we'll see if artificial intelligence can indeed turn things around. Also, while creatives have been, of course, very worried about AI taking their jobs, which we've seen with the strikes, it seems executives should be a little bit nervous as well. I think this is really bad. I think this is, it's a problem, and I'm not quite sure how to put the genie back in the bottle. I don't even know if you can, because even if you're very much against AI, I think it could be used against you, particularly as an executive. And so you want that safety net, either to, particularly if things go wrong, you can say, well, it wasn't me, the machine made a mistake. Thank you very much. And then what are your bosses going to say to that? But while it seems that Never Let Go is simply just not a good movie, look at those scores, the substance seems to have a little heat. Not a lot of heat, but a little heat. And I think it will likely do quite well on digital down the line, just like Blink Twice is currently #1 on iTunes. Oh, we'll talk about that when we get to the digital part. I'm very happy for Blink Twice. The per theater averages for both these movies, though, are weak. This is their opening weekend, and they're not in as many theaters as a typical wide release. So if there was genuine interest in these films, they would be, they'd have better per theater averages than, the movies that have been out for weeks. Okay, quick lesson. So the reason the per theater averages are important is that they show, what the demand is. If you have, it shows how many people are filling the theater, basically. So you'll know if you need more theaters or if people are interested in the movie. But if the per theater average is low, it means that you can't even fill the theaters that you have. So there's no reason to expand. And, again, I think people are waiting for digital. So per theater average number is an important number. As for the rest of the box office, the best hold of the weekend was, what do you know, Deadpool and Wolverine in its 9th weekend. Rumor has it that the film will hit digital, not Disney Plus, but digital, so you'll have to pay for it, on October 1st, which is more bad news for Joker 2, as the stay-home competition for that movie continues to heat up. Not only that, but, Salem's Lot, which looks like actually really good movie. Deadpool and Wolverine is now the 20th highest grossing film of all time. Inside Out 2 is number 8. Isn't that incredible? Domestic on the all-time, they're at number 11 and 13. Wow, Disney had a very good summer. While no other film this year has even been able to come close to making a dent in the all-time lists. Despicable Me 4 is the runner-up to those two, and it's in the 60s. This, 64 or 5 or something on both domestic and worldwide. In their second weekend, Speak No Evil and Matt Walsh's documentary both fell about the same, although the Blumhouse horror remake has double the domestic box office. Still, around 10 million ain't bad, and Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire will surely release another film theatrically. Question is, do they double down, or do they try to go slightly more mainstream to get even more box office and make a real splash? They have a small documentary coming out this weekend, but, the real question is, what, if anything, will the Daily Wire learn from this, I would say small to moderate success, or I guess you could say encouragement, so the question, as I said, what would you do? Double down, or try to see if maybe you can get a little bit more broader appeal? Like Reagan, it's almost out of the top 10, but 26.5 million total domestic. And while Beyonce and Justin Timberlake both thrived after leaving their groups, Jungkook's solo documentary didn't open as big as the BTS concert movie last year. And yes, there's Alien Romulus, about to fall out of the top 10, but it looks like it will end its run with around 350 million. Again, thanks to that overseas box office, which means the franchise still has a pulse, especially after we see how it does on digital and maybe even on streaming, on Disney Plus and Hulu. On that note, let's head over to streaming, starting with Nielsen as usual. But this week, I want to start with movies, because last weekend, and as I was just saying, I think that recent theatrical releases seem to do best on digital instead of streaming. But I had wondered if some movies, some really big movies or special, unique films like Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Alien Romulus, and Horizon could maybe be exceptions that would do well on digital and on streaming, right, at no extra cost. Well, we have our numbers for Horizon when it hit Max, and they're not good. Noted this is only for the first 3 days. Horizon dropped on Max on Friday, August 23rd. But still, this is not what we would hope. I predict that Costner never makes part 4 of Horizon. He wanted this to be a 4-part story. Part 3 is currently filming. Of course, he's taken breaks to promote part 2 at Venice. So I suspect that break will continue and they'll have to rewrite the script so that part 3 is the end. And then part 2 and 3 probably, I suspect, will go directly to Max to try and drive subscribers. Costner might be able to talk Warner Brothers into doing a digital release first, where you have to pay a la carte, so he can try to better recoup his own personal investment. But I don't see a theatrical future for Horizon. I think even in the digital and streaming space, it's not particularly strong. It did not grow an audience there. Like for instance, back in the day, Austin Powers, small film, huge on home video, blew up into a huge theatrical release for the sequel. That's kind of what they were hoping, maybe on a smaller scale, obviously, would happen here, but it hasn't. And Halle Berry can feel good that at least she has strong numbers on streaming, if not in theaters. But Prime Video's jackpot with John Cena and Awkwafina is weak. John Cena, well, I think they're both overexposed, but that's not great for Peacemaker Season 2, which of course just also stars John Cena. You gotta be careful. You don't want to be overexposed. I can understand wanting to collect those paychecks, but it's a delicate dance, delicate balance. The trailer for another Prime Video original movie, though, Brothers, came out last week, and that looked pretty good to me, actually, but we'll see. We'll see. Prime Video, again, has done the best with slightly conservative, male-oriented content, and maybe they should consider that when they're greenlighting original movies. On the overall chart, another older show rules streaming. This time, Prison Break, now available on both Hulu and Netflix. Although I'm sure Netflix is what's really driving that, especially when we get to the Netflix charts in just a moment. But on this list, only the Union, on the overall chart, only the Union and the Umbrella Academy are new content. Everything else is acquired holdover content. But this was an off week for original content. When you head over to their chart, only the final season of the Umbrella Academy was really been able to generate any real interest from viewers, and that's the final season for a reason. No original series this week, a month ago, but the week of this chart, could break 1 billion minutes. And usually you should have at least 1 or 2 shows that can do that. Over on Netflix's charts, looks like Netflix might have a new star with Aaron Pierre. We'll see what kind of stuff. This is good. I'm sure his team, his agent, his representation are working to get something out of this. Surely maybe some more work with Netflix, but also with him doing the voice of Mufasa in the upcoming Disney movie. Let's see, as we've been saying, what he can parlay this into even outside of Netflix. We'll see. Joey King is still an asset for Netflix as well, able to get fans to watch what apparently is a real turkey. With shows, while The Perfect Couple might not have become a pop culture phenomenon like some other Nicole Kidman shows, streaming shows, these are solid viewership numbers. Same for Emily in Paris, which just got renewed for season 5. Chaos? I don't see that coming back. I don't see The Perfect Couple being renewed either, although I don't really know if it's the kind of show that would be renewed. But still, I think Nicole Kidman has proven that she is just very strong in the streaming space, and she will probably continue to make streaming shows for as long as she can or wants to. It will be up to her to say she's done. Also here, you can see Prison Break. 3 seasons of Prison Break are in the top 10 here. And remember, Nielsen's chart was for a month ago. This is for just last week. So we're probably going to see Prison Break on the Nielsen charts for a while. It's just doing really well on Netflix. Over on iTunes, we'll talk about network TV, though, a little bit at the What's Out This Week section. I find that interesting. All right. Because people seem to have a nostalgia for network TV as long as it's not current, which I'm sure must be very frustrating to network TV executives. We'll see, though. All right, so over on iTunes, as I said, I'm thrilled to see Blink Twice at #1. That's a really solid movie and nice work from real-life couple Channing Tatum and writer-director Zoe Kravitz. It's also nice to see another actress who was done wrong by Star Wars, but not just by fans, but by the franchise itself, Naomi Ackie, finally get a role that I think shows her true talent. And Trap is doing well enough that I do think Josh Hartnett will continue his comeback. But M. Night? At this point, I'm not sure who would give him any more money. I mean, I think he's done. And there's the original Beetlejuice, as I said, still getting a boost from the sequel that's currently in theaters. That's pretty amazing. As for this coming week, there's actually a lot happening. Did Lionsgate save its biggest flop for last? Megalopolis will finally hit theaters. Coming out of the festival circuit, many were saying this film is so bad it needs to be seen to be believed. And that seemed like kind of an interesting challenge, but it's been a while. This is another case of maybe, the festival hype being too far behind the film's actual release, and people just lose interest. Again, very short attention span. People have been talking about that with the political news cycle. Last week, there was a new political news story every single day, sometimes 2 a day. And I think entertainment is finding itself, entertainment is becoming more and more like the political news landscape, which I find interesting, including the toxicity and the division. Very, very interesting. But yeah, it took too long. I think people were like, oh yeah, let's do it when Megalopolis was first being talked about. But at this point, I think people can wait to see how bad the movie is when they can do it from the comfort of their own homes or while they're on their commute. Or sail the 7 seas. We'll see what happens. The Wild Robot is also hitting theaters with an excellent Rotten Tomatoes score. It was at 100% until just, I think today. Although Chris Sanders, who of course was behind Lilo and Stitch and helped create How to Train Your Dragon, or bring it to animation, he's been thinking smaller lately. His business hat. I don't think he even wants to own one, but that's going to be a problem for him. The Call of the Wild, I also really enjoyed that movie, but nobody went to see that in theaters or at all. And I am worried a similar fate might befall The Wild Robot. You would think that The Wild Robot would definitely be #1 this coming weekend, but I especially because Beetlejuice will probably fall another 50%, which means Beetlejuice would be somewhere around 12 million. But Beetlejuice could still be #1, I think. I think there's a real chance. We'll see. And yes, there's Ben Shapiro's company releasing Dinesh D'Souza's latest documentary. D'Souza has made plenty of documentaries, and none of them have ever been able to open in the top 10. And this one likely won't either, as it's an extremely limited release, like 1 showing a day, and not that many theaters. Speaking of limited release, 2 awards contenders will hit New York and Los Angeles Saturday night and Lee, with hopes of generating impressive per-theater averages to get people talking and strong audience scores. By the way, the same coming weekend, this is the 50th anniversary season of SNL. That starts with Gene Smart, who just won another Emmy as the first host of the year or season, and Jelly Roll, who also performed at the Emmys, by the way. They'll be the first duo that's up. I think that's pretty good synergy that Saturday night will hit some theaters the same weekend that SNL debuts such a legendary anniversary. I hope it goes well for them. On digital, The Front Room will already be available on Tuesday, while on streaming on Friday with movies, Wolf's, sure enough, goes direct to Apple TV. Really good time. I don't know if it'll play as well at home. It was really fun seeing it in the theater. Paramount Plus has horror film Apartment 7A, and Netflix has Resball, produced by LeBron James. Finally, with series, as I said, network TV, they're like, why do you only want to watch the stuff that's done? Why don't you want to watch our new shows? Well, network TV, I think, has 2 strong contenders this week that might be able to get some interest. So Matlock is on CBS. The reboot starts tonight. And then also Ryan Murphy's Dr. Odyssey on ABC on Thursday. I gotta tell you, even I think these look pretty good. I don't know if I can, should I DVR them? That's right, I still pay for cable. It's hard. I've had trouble cutting the cord. Especially because it comes as part of my internet service package. But, I wonder if they'll find a way to maybe make these available on digital a couple of days after, and they'll certainly be on their streaming services on Paramount Plus and, will Dr. Odyssey be on, because it's ABC, will that be on Hulu, Disney Plus? I'll be curious to see how these shows do. I think they're both very strong entries. If they can't do well, I think network TV is going to probably be very annoyed. So are you planning to check out either of those shows? Also on Thursday, Netflix drops the series Nobody Wants This. That's a weird title for a show. I'd be like, aren't you worried you might be jinxing yourself to call your show that? All right, and that's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what would it take? What kind of upgrades would it take to get you back into theaters? Maybe there's just nothing that can be done because, at the end of the day, it is less expensive to wait. All right, so share your thoughts down. So I guess maybe that's the answer, the economy. All right, so, and again, politics and entertainment find themselves tied together. All right, so share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.